John McMullen. I know will has to watch the football game tonight because that's his job. And he is at today's pigskin.com. And, of course, covers the Eagles at the NovaCare Center today. Jim Schwartz, Frank Reich. Jim Schwartz had his Allen Iverson moment today there, John. Practice? We're sitting here talking about practice. Not a game. Not a game. Vinny Curry, he was asked about him. Why isn't Curry, how did he practice? He's not getting the reps. And he said, who cares about practice?
Yeah, Jim gets his, basically it's an over-under one quip that's going to make everybody laugh, and he gets to at least one in every press conference. But real quick, to bring some negativity, because you guys were too positive, I can't say anything positive about baseball or football or those two idiots running for president. Let me bring some negativity to the table.
Hey, come on, man. We got a great baseball series. I don't know how much positivity we can bring into the football game, but what I can say is this. Jim Schwartz always makes us, as you said, once a week he brings us something here. He was, he's always an interesting quote. He's always an interesting comment, and he talked a little bit today about the challenges that this Redskins team will bring his defense.
Yeah, they got a lot of weapons, possibly, and that's the one you got to keep an eye on because Jordan Reed officially diagnosed with a concussion. So if he's not cleared, and remember, this is his sixth documented concussion since he's arrived in the NFL. So it's going to be really, really hard to imagine that he's going to be cleared by Sunday, and that's a big deal for the Philadelphia Eagles because he might be the best pass-catching tight end in football right now. And as a whole, we kind of touched on it on yesterday's show. The Redskins have a ton of skill position talent, but he's the guy. He's the one it all hinges on. So if he's not able to go, and it's certainly trending in that direction, that's a positive for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and because to me, that changes the game plan for them a lot. That's he's their big red zone threat. But that must mean then, if they feel like they're limited in the red zone, that they could take some more shots down the field, and that's where Deshaun Jackson comes in.
Yeah, and Deshaun obviously always wants to play well against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I don't think that part's going to change. I think there was a little bit, obviously, more emphasis in his mind to sort of get back at Chip Kelly for what went on and how he left the organization. That's not necessarily there anymore. It's not there anymore, let's be honest. But he sees that jersey, and he wants to perform well against the Philadelphia Eagles team. And generally he does when he's out there and when he's playing. And we all know how difficult he is because he's still one of the fastest guys in football, and he can pop the top on any defense, and Jim Schwartz is well aware of that.
Talking with John McMullen, today's coordinators speak as they do on Thursdays, and you get some interesting nuggets from these guys, specifically Schwartz, because he really runs the defense. I mean, Reich, obviously Peterson does have a hand in the offensive play calling, but Reich does have a role. But let's stick on the defensive side of the ball. And, one of the things is the linebacker spot. Was that something that was addressed today? Are we going to see more Bradham? I know Michael Kendricks the other day had, hey, what do you think about your play? And he's like, my play? I'm not playing at all. What are you guys talking about? So is that a precursor to him kind of getting pushed out?
Well, it's a possibility because obviously he's not a key core contributor to this defense. But I think what Jim's mentality was, and I kind of explained it today when I was looking at the Redskins 5 on the Skins at 973ESPN.com, the linebackers in general. And he wants to rotate those guys, and I compared it to a baseball manager who's, maybe not going to use his closer in game 55 of the season because he understands it's a marathon, and if he's overused him in the past week, it might not look good in that particular game, the decision, but as Jim kind of intimated today, look, Jordan Hicks doesn't have a history of, number one, playing through an NFL season. Remember, he got hurt, I think, after 7 games last year. It was 7 or 8. And dating back to his college days, he had a number of injuries. Plus, if you think even if you're healthy at the college level, you're playing 12, 13 games, which is less than an NFL season. So basically, he wants to put him on a pitch count. He wants to put Nigel Bradham on a pitch count. And some other guys are going to have to play at times if they're going to stay fresh through 16 games. So that was his mentality behind the rotation against the Lions, and it didn't work out. So in that one-game sense, it looks like a bad decision. But if you think about the season as a whole, you start to understand Jim's thinking.
Talking with John McMullen, our Eagles insider. And, John, what was Jim's explanation on why Vinny Curry only played 16 snaps?
Well, he kind of blamed that on himself, not getting any, and he mentioned Bo Allen as well, not getting enough reps in that particular rotation on the defensive line. And, you know, Brandon's been playing very well. It's tough to take him off the field. So I think if you look at Vinny and what he's been doing, he's been playing more left end than right end. And then sort of on passing downs, they'll kick him inside on occasion and use that NASCAR package where they have all their pass rushers on the field at one time. So he hasn't been playing a ton of right end. And I think at some point that's going to have to change for two reasons. One, you want to give Connor Barwin a breather every now and again, and the bottom line is Connor's not playing as well as Brandon, so it's easier to mix in for him because you don't want to take Brandon Graham off the field right now the way he's playing.
How about the way the defense has been as a whole? Because all four games, the defense seems that it's been better in the second half than the first half. Why does Jim Schwartz think that's the case?
Well, I mean, it was disappointing against the Lions. I mean, they were pretty good as a whole through the first three games. I mean, they hadn't given up a passing touchdown through the first three games, and that's just not sustainable. So I think a lot of people were disappointed in the way things worked out in the first half, and they certainly should have been because all of a sudden you give up three passing touchdowns. And I think Jim denied it, but I think part of it was the bye week and getting back up to speed. It's always difficult to get back into that mindset after you've been off from a week, so I think that contributed to it. But to be honest, I don't think he really knows, and I don't think any of us know why they didn't play, especially when you consider how well they played in the second half. I mean, it's one thing if you have a bad game, and you chalk it up to say it's just not our day. But when you play so poorly in the first half and you play so well in the second half, and there weren't major changes really, you have to scratch your head and say what was going on there.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, our guest. Of course, the running backs last week, Theo Reddick caught the ball twice for touchdowns. They targeted Kendricks, and that should be a point of emphasis. Chris Thompson, a good third down back, catching the ball out of the backfield there. Is that something that Schwartz is concerned that people are going to start attacking the perimeter against his defense with the aggressiveness that he shows with those ends?
Yeah, I'm sure he is, and he kind of mentioned that, but at the same time, you take a sort of a sigh of relief and, you know, hey, it's not going to be Theo Reddick every week because that might be the best pass-catching running back in football. And, yeah, Chris Thompson is okay, and he can do it pretty well. He's a nice compliment to Matt Jones, but he's not Theo Reddick. So right there, you feel a little bit better about yourself. And by the way, Nigel Bradham has been off the charts as far as pass coverage, as far as covering those backs out of the backfield. And that's why so many people criticize Jim Schwartz for putting Michael Kendricks out there because it just didn't make a lot of sense. And that brings us back to Kendricks. And why does somebody with that kind of athleticism, which is certainly he's certainly faster, quicker, more explosive than Nigel Bradham, but yet he's not good in pass coverage. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for the coaches because he should be better than he is. He should be like his brother, who's becoming a superstar in Minnesota, but he's not. And it really, really is one where you see how much confidence means in the NFL, because right now Michael Kendricks just doesn't have confidence in himself, and he's in position to make plays, and he doesn't make them.
And John, it seems like he's getting frustrated now too. Like when you guys ask him, "What do you think about your play?" and his response is, "What are you talking about? I'm not playing." Now it's starting to seem like, when you say things to people because you want them to tell the other person, like you want it to get back to them.
Yeah,
it seems like that's kind of the direction he's taking now. Like he wants the Eagles to know that he's not happy.
Yeah, and I think they do know that. But I think from their standpoint, it becomes, look, you can say you're not playing as much as you used to. I mean, this is a guy who, go back 2 years, he played almost 100% of the snaps. So, yeah, he's not used to this. But you can't really justify more snaps for a guy who's not producing in the ones he's being given. And he can argue rust, or he can argue he doesn't get a feel for the game. But the only way you get more playing time in the NFL is to produce in the playing time that you are getting. And right now, Michael's just not doing that. And he can talk all about his pedigree of being a second-round pick, his athleticism, his brother, and the fact that, he could do every single drill at the combine better than Nigel Bradham. But right now, Nigel Bradham's a much better football player. So why are you going to take him off the field until he gets arrested the next time, I suppose? That's my shot at Nigel Bradham.
First Chip Kelly, now Nigel Bradham. No one's safe from John McMullen. John's with us here. Let's flip it over to the other side. And if you're Philadelphia, this looks like a Redskins team that gives up over 5 yards a carry on the ground. It would seem that you're going to see Matthews. You would probably see some mix-up with Smallwood in there. But you want to attack this team running the football.
Yeah, you do. And at some point, we keep saying you want to feed Ryan Matthews more and get him more involved. And Doug said earlier in the week he's completely healthy. So the ankle injury can't be used as an excuse. But this is a guy who really hasn't produced since the concussion last season. So whether you can go from point A to point B and say he's just not the same player because of the concussion, that I don't know. But the reality is he hasn't been the same guy. And I don't know how much longer you can just keep feeding him the football if he's going to average 3.2 yards a rush or whatever he is right now, especially when you have a young back who's obviously got a lot of juice in his legs, and Wendell Smallwood. Kenyon Barner's been effective in his rare opportunities. At some point, if he continues to not run the football as well as we expect, you got to give these young guys a chance.
Is this the week with Norman and Breeland coming back? It seems like Breeland might be the guy to go after.
Well, yeah, between those two, that's always the case. You can't be afraid of Josh Norman because you can't make it a one-sided game. I remember Green Bay playing Seattle a couple of years ago when Aaron Rodgers was at the height of his career, and they just didn't throw the ball to Richard Sherman's side, and the Packers ended up losing the game because you can't play football that way. So you can't be afraid of Josh Norman, but you also have to realize he's really, really good, and he's very lengthy. He tends to bait quarterbacks and try to fool them to think they have something, and then all of a sudden it'll be an interception going the other way. So you have to be very aware of where he is on the football field. You're certainly going to go after Breeland more than him. And that's a concern for the Eagles because, as we say week in and week out, they're still talent deficient at the receiver position. And it's because whoever Josh Norman is covering on a particular play, they're probably not going to be open.
That's true.
And since we're talking about the passing game, John, and the vertical game, the Eagles are among the bottom teams in the NFL of teams trying to throw the ball deep. And what did Frank Reich have to say about that today?
Yeah, they are. And part of that is Whether they want to admit it or not, they're trying to build up the confidence of Carson Wentz. I think that's just a natural thing to do for any coach when they have a young quarterback. The last thing you want to do is sort of press the football down the field, because if you do that, you're more susceptible to interceptions. And all of a sudden, if interceptions start to pile up, then it's going to affect the confidence of the quarterback. So I think the Eagles have been very, very aware of that, and they're being very judicious on how many times they press the defense down the field. But I think that's going to continue to open up. And we saw it, and it didn't work on the last play, the last offensive play of the Eagles, when they tried to put it downfield to Nelson Aguilar. You get the interception. Carson's first of his professional career. It didn't work, but it was a good chance. It was a good play. They had an opportunity. It was one-on-one coverage. It was a 50-50 ball. I've said you got to expect more out of your wide receiver in that particular position. And I think the Eagles, every week that goes by, they're more aware that you don't have to worry about the confidence of Carson Wentz. He's going to be fine. His psyche's going to be fine. And I think they'll continue to throw the football downfield more and more as we go through the season.
Plenty more on this game at 97.3 ESPN.com, including John's 5 on the Redskins, and that's this week's opponent, of course. And give us a couple of little nuggets about this team that, as we get ready for the first NFC East game of the year, and also a team that's won 3 straight on the season, also 3 straight in this series. And the winner of this game, depending on what happens in Green Bay this week when Dallas plays the Packers, they could be in first place at the end of the week. So what are some of your 5 on the Redskins for this week?
Well, they've been very effective offensively. I don't think people realize they're averaging almost 6 yards a play. So they can move the football. And we talked about their receivers, not only Jordan Reed, and as I said, that's going to be a big, big break if he's not able to go, but Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Jamison Crowder, they can move the football. And they are first in the NFL on 3 and outs. In other words, they go 3 and out fewer than anybody else in football. And I think that would surprise a number of people. So that's one thing you have to realize about the Redskins. And second, defensively, they are really, really effective at forcing fumbles, something Joe Barry, their defensive coordinator, really, really emphasizes week to week. They've forced a fumble in 11 straight games. If you go back to 2015, they lead the NFL in forced fumbles. So there are some things you really, really have to be aware with when you play the Washington Redskins.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe Barry was the defensive coordinator in San Diego when Frank Reich was there, so those two should know each other pretty well.
Yeah, and the NFL, it's a big old boys club, and all the coaches tend to know each other pretty well. But I think the Eagles, just from the fact that even though it's a new regime, from the Eagles' standpoint, Doug was here before, and the Eagles obviously know the Redskins very well and vice versa. So you don't have a lot of surprises when you have those division games. And that continues. Each side will know each other very, very well. But this is,